Hello. Gnostic Catharism has no commandments but one necessity. Cathar Love 126. Yes, Gnostic Catharism has no commandments. Very little doctrine. But it does have the necessity to seek out knowledge. That means spiritual, mystical and scientific knowledge. To find out not just what to believe in, but to know what is actual fact, actual reality. To demonstrate this, I go back 60 odd years. I was in Surface Paradise in Queensland, and I was practicing hypnosis, medical hypnosis, for people who had insomnia, various pains, maladies, and I treated people, but I had the rule that if I didn't get the result, in other words I had a particular pain or ache, or, as I said, insomnia, but if it wasn't rectified, then I didn't take payment. Thankfully, on most occasions I was paid. Now, I was practicing hypnosis. I was hypnotizing people. I was taking away their pain in most cases, or rectifying their situation that they came to see me for. And yet I read in the paper, a national paper, that according to the AMA, Australian Medical Association, this is the top medical body in Australia, that hypnosis did not exist. There was no scientific evidence to support it. Oh, here I was, doing hypnosis and being paid for it. And this was prior to the time when one could go and study hypnosis, because in those days there were hypnotic schools or schools for hypnosis didn't exist. Later on, I studied for 9 years Chinese traditional medicine. My ex-wife said, "Why don't you do something simple?" She said, "and just study Western medicine." I said, "No, I think Chinese traditional medicine is far more interesting." Anyway, and with Chinese traditional medicine, part of that is acupuncture. And although I was primarily interested in herbs, when people came to see me, they often had to give them acupuncture as well. And I pick up the national paper of the day, possibly the Herald, I don't remember which one, and there it was again, the Australian Medical Association, the AMA, telling me telling the world, its readers, that there's no scientific basis for acupuncture. And yet here I am, using acupuncture, not always successful, but many cases, I'd like to say most cases, for the situation, it was successful. And but so the situation is, here we are to seek out knowledge, science, but I'd like to say good science, because there is a tremendous amount of arrogance in the West. Hypnosis goes back in India, possibly 1,000 years or more. Acupuncture is certainly 2,000 years old in China, and yet the Australian Medical Association can say there's no scientific basis for it. And yet today, in today's climate, here we have medical doctors who are using hypnosis in their practice, and there are other Western medical doctors who are using acupuncture in their practice. So much for no scientific evidence to back it. that's a good excuse sometimes for plain ignorance. This morning, early in the morning, I was awoken with these thoughts buzzing around in my head. So again, I was up and before dawn, and with my trusty computer started typing away. I'd like to read you, maybe not all, but some of what I was written, because it's in reference to what I'm just talking about, the fact of seeking knowledge, but seeking good knowledge. Catharism has no commandments, but it does have one necessity, and that is to know. This to know means seeking out philosophy, spirituality and science. This quest for all types and varieties of knowledge makes Gnostic Catharism quite distinct and even unique amongst all other philosophies, but especially other religions, cults and spiritual paths. Religion, virtually by definition, is a closed system of thinking, whereas Gnostic Catharism is, through being Gnostic, a free and open system of thinking. The end result of these two widely differing deific systems is a vast and wide theological chasm. Simply put, all religions and religious cults have commandments, dogmas, doctrines and rules, which are strictures constraining how one thinks and acts out living one's life. Contrarily, Gnostic Catharism is all about the liberation and elevation of mind, body and soul, without placing any confines or restrictions that would prevent one living life to the fullest while still reaching for the stars. Really, today's Catharism is perfect for mankind, as well as for any extraterrestrial race inhabiting elsewhere in the cosmos. As we each reach out for perfection of self, the elevation of one's soul, while seeking out science, all tied together through the connective tissue of respect and love. Love, that is, love of all, with love for all. Love, though, as a force for good, has to date faced the seemingly insurmountable impediments from those seeking power and control over us. Through whatever means available, which too often is religion or state, sometimes both, acting in unison. This is the reason why medieval Catharism, with its ethos of unconditional love for all, was no match for the absolute power and control of Rome, which would brook no rivals. Even so, the legacy of all things loving, the reintroduction of love amongst couples, the equality of the sexes, the egalitarianism for all citizens, all of which replaced and repudiated the feudal system of both church and state, which was then in place, and the people loved it. Pope Pius III, as a consequence, could see his church would be no match for the inevitable growth of Catharism, so he instigated a papal invasion termed the Albigensian Crusade into the area of what is now known as the south of France. Though in the first millennium it was known as Languedoc or Occitania. with a language and culture distinctly different to the French of the North. It has now passed into history how the Catholic Church committed genocide against the Cathars. Initially through the Albigensian Crusade, then when it failed to extinguish the bright fire of Catharism, Pope Pius III introduced one of the great beasts to savage both liberty and love, the Holy Inquisition, which ravaged and routed the Cathar movement. Eventually, after a 100-year period, the Inquisition made Catharism just a memory of just what could have been. And yet, here it is again. But this time round, it's here to stay. Why? Because the world is desperate for a spiritual and mystical movement that is without limitations and strictures, that religions which manacle the mind and constrict the soul. The world is desperately needing, though most don't know it yet, a spiritual philosophic path that allows one and wants one and all to fulfill and enjoy the totality of their potential as human beings, while yet being gentle and loving to nature and the environment. To gain a feel for the vast chasm dividing Gnostic Catharism from other philosophies and religions, consider a critical difference. Catharism liberates the mind, body and spirit through the concept and knowledge of reincarnation, which means to the Cathars immortality and eternity.